Okay, I've said it many times on this show. When you get right down to it, it's so divided what's happening in our country right now that it seems like there's only reds or blues and there's only a division down the middle. And I think one of the main overriding factors and features of the greatness of America was that its foundations were in faith. Its foundations were in family. And the main foundation that those two pursued was freedom for your family and for your faith. And without faith, freedom, and family, we don't have a country. And while the left and the anarchists continue to show that they're Marxists, they want to eliminate our religious symbols, they want to break down the nuclear family, and that is how they will ruin what we knew as the greatest freedoms ever in the history of humanity. Now, to talk about your faith, our faith, and the man himself, the President of the United States, his faith, Pastor Paula White-Cain joins us right now. She's a personal minister, spiritual advisor to President Donald Trump, author of the book Something Greater, Finding Triumph Over Trials, and hosts the television show Paula White Today. Paula, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's great to be with you, and you are absolutely right. We are absolutely in a battle for our freedom and what this great nation was founded on, and hopefully people's eyes are being opened to how intense this fight is and what it's all about.
So let me ask you this. A really good friend of mine, Senator Andrew Lanza from here in New York, he was down at the White House a few months ago, and he was talking to me about how calm Mike Pence is. And he said, you know, it almost looks strange how calm he is. And I said, I know, I always wonder, how is he just always the same? And he said to me, John, he has such Christian faith that no matter what is happening, he's resolved to the fact that it's God's plan, and that whatever is happening is what God wants to happen, and that's why he's always in control. Do you ever try to talk to the president? I know you're one of his personal ministers and spiritual. Do you ever try to talk to him about demonstrating that coolness, that, hey, it's always God's plan. You don't have to go so crazy sometimes?
Well, you know, God makes us all different. We all have a different type of personality and makeup. You see where throughout all the Bible, God used some pretty radical people that had some strong personality. And the president is exactly what I remind him all the time, you know, that of course, God gave you this personality. You were formed. He knew everything about you. I personally believe that he has been chosen to be in this position, that we needed someone very strong. We needed someone, some people can't handle what they call his personality. They think it's too tough. But let me tell you something. There's a very compassionate side to him. There's a very caring side to him. I've been his personal pastor and deep friend of the family for 19 years now. I've seen every side of this man you can see. And the one thing I say is you will always get authenticity. I guess if 19 minutes after you were elected, they started already coming after you, not even, I mean, prior to the election, they were spying on the campaign.
Right.
And they started with the impeachment. They started, I mean, where the Russian hoax, the collusion, you know, the Ukrainian letter. I mean, it just goes on and on what they've done to this president, to his family. But they really haven't done it just to him. He's standing in the way, and they're doing it to us, because he was a disruptor, and he is a disruptor as far as messing up the typical political system. Yeah, and that kind of strength has been needed.
I've had many, you know, people from different spiritual and faith-based communities on the show, and I've had many go as far as to say that Trump was, you know, sent from heaven. He was a godsend to us. And I kind of think that's like underkill instead of overkill. It's like stating the obvious. If you have faith, whatever is happening in our life, of course, that's the path that God has put it on, right? So I think that's a given that God put him here. But what does he do? If you can give us a little inside look wherever it doesn't violate any ethics, but what kind of spiritual or faithful rituals does the president do to keep himself sane when he's constantly under attack, like you said, from 19 minutes after his election till today?
The president's much calmer than I think people think he is, and certainly than the corrupt media portrays him to be. First off, he's surrounded by people of faith, like you mentioned, Vice President Mike Pence, myself, Kaylee. I mean, I just go on and on. Mark Meadows. You can't go 2 feet without being around him and seeing a person of prayer, of faith, and deep rooted. That's number one. The president has a strong walk with God himself. He was raised in church, confirmed Presbyterian as a child, but grew up in Norman Vincent Peale's church. You saw this Sunday how comfortable he was in church. He loved it. He is a non-denominational Christian. Our president's a Christian. When I talk to him every few days, if quite often. I talked to him, I think it was yesterday in the morning, about his faith, and we were just talking about different situations, circumstances, and he's a person of prayer. He's a person that is very thankful for prayer. He meditates a lot. He's very contemplative. And his language might be different than someone like Vice President Pence, which it is quite different. But he'll say, when he came out of the hospital, when he said it was a miracle what God did for him, he says, the boss, when his voice sounds like you a lot, right? The boss.
Yo, now, that guy over there, the man upstairs, the good guy.
Big man, right? The boss, all right? And that to him, and then he says, there is someone more famous than me, and his name is Jesus Christ. And he knows, now, he might not go around and say, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and I right now, and talk like I talk, or talk like someone else talks, or like a preacher or a pastor. But he is deeply, you look at all the decisions he's made. You talk about strengthening the nuclear family. We have one of the lowest in our foster care system. We have put regulations to remove restrictions on adoptions. We alleviated within the first few years, I think it's the first year and a half, 5.6 million people off of food stamps, alleviating poverty. You look at the opportunity zones, which has created 500,000 jobs, 500,000, 9 million within the Hispanic community, most within distressed communities, Black community, Hispanic, poverty. You see the highest ownership ever in the Hispanic community. Opportunity zones, for those who wouldn't know, is under the Job Acts and the tax cuts, which was where, with the stroke of the pen, our president made a move that private wealth could get a tax incentive and a tax break to help rebuild.
Invest in inner cities and development zones. Amazing. Go. Hey, you know what, Pastor Paula, I got to tell you, if you ever have any time in your career, it seems like you would be a great person to run for office, because I don't know many ministers who could start citing tax policy and the Jobs Act like you. So you must be learning from this guy. But I have to ask you this. What many people overlook when we hear about Black Lives Matter and minority and this, that, and the other thing, the overwhelming majority of American citizens are believers in some Christian faith. Regardless if they're white, if they're Black, if they're Latino. When I go to Miami, I see these older ladies and men who are Latino. They're such faithful people. They're so committed to the family. Christianity covers all races, all creeds, all kinds. Do you think the president needs to sharpen the message to say, hey, I don't care what color you are, what sex you are, if you're a Christian, I'm with you?
He has. He's done it from the very beginning. It's not him sharpening it. It's people like yourself, me on this call, getting that message out. They cut our legs off everywhere, from Twitter to, social media, everything. It started with, let's put Mary back in Christmas. I love this story. He comes to the White House, right? And he stands up, and he's just gotten in, and it's they have a tree there, and they call it the holiday tree. He's got the family, he's got close friends around him, and he says, now, why do you call that a holiday tree? And he says, it has lights on it. And they go, yeah. He says, it's got that fake snow on it. He says, yeah. It's got those ornaments on it. He goes, it's called a Christmas tree. It's a Christmas tree. So it's like, he's like, why are you calling it this? That's our president. From the simplicity of saying, let's put Mary back in Christmas, to actually what he's done. He's done more for persecuted Christians around the world. Andrew Brunson, where President Obama did absolutely nothing for the release of him. He got him back from a Turkish prison for being in prison for the gospel's sake. Otto Warmbier, when he was brutally murdered by North Koreans, had his family, and I was there with them for hours for a private dinner, on and on, was the largest ministerial alliance at the State Department for persecuted religions. Also signed an executive order that just put another $50 million in. People don't talk about what's happening in China with 63 million, mostly Muslims.
We have been breaking that down. Pastor Paula, I want to thank you so much. You are a blessing to our show. You're a blessing to be there for our president. And keep fighting the good fight. God bless you, and thank you.
Thank you. And everybody get out to vote. And listen, if you are a person of faith, there really is only one way to vote, and that is for President Donald J. Trump.
Thank you very much. Pastor Paula White-Cain. We'll take a quick break, come back with some news of the day right after this, and AC Mike Lopez.